Good morning, welcome to Tristar Digging. I appreciate you joining me today. My name is Sam and we are standing on a site that did the last video on. This is where I'm still at the Hickory Ridge Road project. But yesterday I came in here and dug out another little driveway and into a shop pad area. So that's what you see behind me is all this cleared land, and a lot of the pile of stuff is right here behind me. The dozer and excavator sitting down here in the corner, and it came to rain last night. But it's in places like that, it's really muddy. But overall, I'm really kind of impressed at how dry it is. We haven't had any significant rain in a while, but it came a monsoon last night, but the ground did a pretty good job of soaking it up. What I want to do first thing this morning is that the Cat 313 is due 1,000-hour service. And since it's a little wet and a little muddy this morning, might be a good time to go ahead and get some of that knocked out. I generally don't do that on a job site, but it's a convenient time to do that today, and it's a little bit better to do it at home. You got everything there. But anyway, we're gonna work on that. I did forget my oil catch pan, so I'll be able to do everything except drain the oil and put a new oil filter on it. We'll get started on that, get that thing warmed up. We'll track it up to where the truck is, and we'll do that first thing this morning, and we'll see what else we get into today. Got the excavator started up there and put it into warm-up mode. That thing will take a few minutes and get itself all warmed up. We'll go up here to the truck, get the box out of the back, and see what all filters and all that we have to change out today, and get all that kind of lined up, and then we'll come back and get the excavator. When I bought this excavator, it came with, or actually I renewed the contract for the service plan. I forget what that's called, but for the first so many thousand hours, they send you filters and oil test kits and all that stuff as part of the plan that you get. And that's what these are. These are oil test kits. They've got a tube in there and little containers that you put the oil in. And I've got to see what all needs to be sampled, probably everything, but they've sent a bunch of those, that's for sure. And then you've got your air filter, that's an outside air filter, water separator, oil, fuel filter, and engine oil filter. That's probably a cabin filter. That's another kind of filter. And then the outside cabin filter. I'm kind of surprised that we don't have a hydraulic filter, because I would have thought for sure hydraulic filter will be due on 1,000 hours. Anyway, let's sort through this stuff and see what we got. Got the old trusty book out, and I was wrong about the hydraulic oil filter, and they don't recommend changing that until 3,000 hours. Basically what we have to do is the filters that they've sent me, I've got to get that taken care of, and then the oil samples as well. Let's take a look now at the filters now that I got them open and show you what I have. This is an external air filter that goes on the side of the machine on the outside. This is an inner breather air filter. That's the outer breather air filter. That's the fuel water separator. And this is an internal cab, that's AC cab filter there. And then of course the oil filter. And then I'm going to sample if I can get these final drive things, if I've got the tool to do it with. I'm going to sample the final drive oil as well. That all depends on how hard that is to get off here. Well, that's what these are for, the right and the left. Sample those, then I'll sample the engine oil and sample the hydraulic oil as well. And the way you do that, and we'll go over that a little bit more in detail in a minute. Use a little contraption right here, and you screw these bottles on to the bottom of it. And I'll show you how that works here in just a few minutes. And I may end up going and getting that oil pan and bring it back and just go ahead and change the oil too. It's still pretty wet out here. Let's get started on this and see how far we get. Okay, first thing we're going to do is change this air filter on the outside, which is a cabin filter. And for some reason, they've got that under lock and key. The only way you can get in there is with that key, so y'all can't see from where you are. Now then you can see a little better. You just simply pop this thing out and get rid of that one. And we'll put this brand new one in there. That ought to help it breathe a little better. Just like that. And then you lock that back up. And the next thing we'll take care of is the engine air filter, the inner and the outer. And to do that, we just simply loosen these little catches right here, and that will let that outer filter. And just like that, that cap pops off as soon as you get it undone. And there we go. And then you just simply pop this one out. We don't need it anymore. On the ground it goes. And then that other air filter, the inner one that I was talking about, is all the way back in here, and you got to reach in there and pull that one out, just like that. You know, that doesn't look bad. It doesn't look dirty at all, and it probably doesn't see a lot, but as much as these machines cost, that filter right there is cheap insurance. Okay, we got that one in there. Now let's get our other one off the roof here. This is kind of a neat filter. It pulls air in through these little ports here, and then it draws clean air out the back and pulls it into that next chamber in there. All right, now we're good. We put the cover back on it, and that is taken care of. Got those changed now, and I'm gonna leave that compartment open because I'm gonna bring the backpack blower and blow the radiators and stuff out and blow this compartment out here in just a little bit. Okay, the next one we've got is the interior cabin filter, and that one's easy. It's right here behind the seat. Right here, very simple. Take that cover off, and then you just simply pull it out. And put the new one right back in. There we go. Now then, watch this. You know I tend to run with the doors open. I probably shouldn't, but that's what happens with the interior cabin filter when you don't keep the doors shut. Maybe I ought to do that. Probably not. Let's put the cover back on it, and then we'll move on to the fuel filter with the water separator. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and put this jug of government juice in there because I need this container when I get ready to change the fuel filter. I need to be able to catch what fuel is actually in that housing so I don't spill it out on the ground. And this container will work good for that. So we'll get this put in here, and then we'll move on to that. All right, that's got that. And depends on where you buy this stuff. You can run anywhere. I generally get it at Costco. I think it's like $13 and something at Costco now. 13, 14. If you buy it at the parts store, you probably pay 20 something for it. So pretty much any price you're paying for that, that's just an absolute waste of money. But I guess there's people would feel differently than that. Okay, now then we want to drain. This is the fuel filter housing, and we want to drain the fuel out of that so it doesn't go everywhere when I open it. And what I'm going to do is take this hose off. Actually, that might actually go down in there. That would be just fantastic if it would. Nope, it ain't gonna work. That won't go down in there. We'll just take it off and run it in there like that. Now then, I just got to turn this little knob under here to get that to start draining. Easy for you to say, wow. Well, that is trying to kink and come off of there. I don't want that. I suppose the best thing to do is start the machine up and swing it a little sideways, and I'll just be able to hold it underneath there because it'll swing this part of it out over the tracks. That should do it. Now then, all I gotta do is just put that up under there like that and turn this to open. There we go, it's draining now. I can hear it, but I can't see it. But we'll see when it gets low enough. I think I can give you a look at it. If I drop this down just a little bit. Oh yeah, you can see it coming out there now. It ain't coming out fast, but it is coming out. Clear this glass off a little bit and y'all be able to see it when it gets down to about empty. There we go. See the line right there? It's almost done. Get this finished draining out. We'll spin that off and put the new one on it. I might be able to spin this off with my hands, but if I don't, I can go get an oil filter wrench. Oh yeah, it's gonna come off. I've got to get that sensor off of it that it detects water. There we go. Ow, that hurt. Alrighty. I was having a little bit of trouble there a minute ago trying to unscrew that, and you can see that there, what on the bottom I was trying to unscrew, drain that water. That's not how that works. It's kind of like a plunger, it goes up and down. What I should have done was worked it back and forth and pulled it down, and then it would have started working better. But anyway, that's the first time I've done this one, so what's the learning on it? Then we just want to simply take out this filter here that screws in and set it over here to the side. There's a little bit of fuel still left in here, and there's a little bit of contamination in the bottom. Then I really want to make sure I get all that out. So I'll swirl that around and pour it in this container here. So now that I got all that fuel out, let me just show you how that works. So I should have just twisted it and pulled it straight down like that right there. And that's how you do that. And push it right back up in. There's still a little bit of dirt or contaminants inside this filter housing here, and I really want to get that clean. I'm going to take this over to the truck and squirt a little fuel in it, swish it around a little bit. I'm going to take care of that, and I'll be back and put that other filter in it. We want to get this filter put back in here, and it's just threaded on the bottom. You just simply drop it in there like that and screw it down. Just like that. And then we just screw it back onto the housing here and plug everything back up. Just like that. And on this, because it's got an electric fuel pump, it will prime itself. It'll fill that canister up. You cycle the switch a few times, and it actually tells you in the book, I suppose. You cycle it a few times, it'll fill this back up, and it'll start back up pretty easy. Now we're down to the point where we want to take an oil sample, and Cat has made this super easy to do. We'll walk through the process of doing that, and we're going to catch us some oil in this. We'll send this off to their lab. They'll test it and see if there's anything wrong with the engine, any contaminants that are in there. So it's a good way to take care of your machine, and it's a fairly cheap way to do it too. First thing we got to do is get the machine started up. It's already up to operating temperature when we brought it up here. Now I just got to get it set to idle, and then I'll show you what we do next. Well, you heard it start, and then you heard it die. I didn't do what I just told y'all that you should do, and that's to cycle it a few times to let that fuel filter fill up with fuel. Anyway, it's filling up now. I'll give it a few seconds to do that. I'm gonna cycle it through again. The engine is out of fuel. It's gonna take a little bit to try to get this thing started now. Okay, I have cycled it a few times. Let's see how hard it's gonna be to start. All right, well that surprised me. It started right up, so that's a good thing. Now then we want to get this oil sample taken. Hopefully you can hear me on that engine noise, but the first thing we want to do is take off this sampling port right here. Take that off, and that needs to be cleaned really well so you don't get any contaminants in your oil. Now then what we do is we take this hose right here, and it's got a little port on it, and you stick it in there, and it releases a spring or something in there, and it allows oil to start coming out this hose. And the first little bit of oil, it says 4 ounces, to drain 4 ounces out of it first before you take your actual sample. I'm gonna plug this in, drain a little bit of oil out of it, and then we'll get our actual bottle, screw the bottle onto the bottom of it, and take our sample that we're gonna send off. It just so happens, I happen to have a Dr. Pepper bottle laying around. Imagine that. You see that oil going in there, you just simply push that in at the top, here it comes. That just gets any contaminants out of that port and out of that immediate area, and then you can take a proper sample. That ought to be enough. Now then, I gotta remember not to drink that. We'll screw a bottle on here. Get us a little bit more for our sample. That ought to be enough right there. And that's it, that's all you do. Then you take this lid off and dispose of it because this has got contaminated oil in it. You don't want to reuse that. They will furnish you some more of those. Only thing left to do now is get the label filled out, put it down here in the bottle, and we'll send that off. That takes care of the engine oil. Now then we want to do the hydraulic oil. This is going to be a little bit harder to do because it's up on top there, down inside that swing motor housing. So I'm just going to set the camera up to where you can see. I don't think you'll be able to hear me at all, so I'm just going to go through the process like we did the engine oil, and we'll get that finished up. I really don't want to touch that hose to that bottle with that engine oil on it, so I'm trying to be real careful not to do that. I'm going to do the same thing here, is drain out about 8 ounces of it, and then we'll put the bottle on it. That ought to be good. Now let me find my bottle right here. There we go. That's all there is to it. Fortunately, Leslie, the property owner, he had a bucket that saved me a trip from having to go home and get that oil pan. So let's get this inspection plate here off and let's see about getting this oil out. And wouldn't you know it, I'm parked on a little bit of a hill and the drain plug is on the upper side of this oil pan. I need it to have been right here, but I'll just swing the machine around and that'll put it on the downside slope, and we'll be able to get that oil drained out good. Okay, that got that spud around there good where we want it, and now then that's obvious, that's the drain tube right there. Actually, I need to go up here and loosen the dipstick so that it has some air to help it drain out better. There, then that ought to help it draw air and be able to drain. Let's climb back under here and see what kind of drain plug Cat put on this. Oh, that's one of them that end screws. That's good. If I can get my hand underneath here, we'll be in good shape. Gonna have to get a pair of pliers. Oh. Now, that's the wrong way. I think we got her now. Oh yeah, we got her going our way now. Well, it's draining out awful slow. That's fully open. We'll let that drain out for a minute and move on to the next thing of getting the filter changed and putting the new oil in it. While that's draining out, we want to drain the oil that's in this oil filter housing. We want to drain that out, and the way you do that, there's a little tube right here. Just put something underneath that, turn that little knob, and we'll probably have to break the seal on that to give it a little bit of air. Let's do that maybe with my hands. Oh yeah, that worked. So let's turn that knob back on, give it a little bit of air. Well, that broke seal right there, it should be coming out. There it goes. Yeah, you can see that oil draining in there. I don't know how much that little filter housing holds. Hopefully not more than 12 ounces. That looks like it's winding down right there. About 8 ounces looks like. Turn that back off. Definitely want to turn that back off. If not, you'll have a mess back here. We'll spin this thing the rest of the way off. Get that filter out of there. That thing's gonna drip for just a second. And there we go. And the top side of that filter's got a funny little shape right there that actually goes into this filter housing and then makes a half a turn. So it goes in and you can feel it and you push it, it's kind of like spring loaded, and then you give it a half a turn and it locks itself in place like that. And then you just simply put it back on and tighten it back down. Hand tight's good enough. Let's check on our oil now. I think it's coming down to an end. Yeah, it's just a small drip there. Not much left in there. While that's finishing draining out there, I want to go ahead and seal up these sample bottles. And the way that I like to do that is, before I mail them or seal them up, is just take a little bit of duct tape and make sure that that lid is tight. And then I'll just wrap a little bit of duct tape around that, attaching that to the bottle and to the lid. Just make sure, double sure that does not come open for whatever reason. Sealed good and tight. Just like that. That one's ready to go. I did find some tools, or a tool, that I think I can get the final drive plugs out with. I think. It doesn't fit the tightest in the world, but I'm not going to try to strip it either. We'll see if it's going to work. Actually, last year, I bought a big set of these Allen head wrenches for the dozer, and there's various sizes on there, and they're metric and standard, but they're too big for the excavator. So that didn't work out for me. I did find this Allen wrench in the toolbox. This is actually the one that fits the teeth on the 259D skid steer. Take those on and off. So we're going to try this here in just a minute and see if we can get those broke loose to take those oil samples. All right, I'm not ready to take this out just yet. I just want to see if I can get one of these plugs broke loose while that oil's draining out, because these are turned on the bottom. If I took that out right there to take a sample, I'd lose all my oil. This one right here is the drain plug. It's a little bit higher, and so it probably would work for taking a sample on this side, but not the other side. I need to get something to clean that out so I don't get no dirt in there. Because that would contaminate your sample. Now then, I learned this from a guy on YouTube who was doing this. He changed oil. I think he was a cat, worked at a cat dealership anyway. But he just took a hammer and just gave out a good smack to kind of loosen those threads up behind that. And that seemed to work pretty good. Now, as I mentioned, this Allen wrench doesn't fit in there the tightest in the world, and I sure don't want to round that off. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a tug and see if we can loosen it up. One more hit, just for good measure. And my vice grips are trying to come off. Ain't gonna work when I need a little bit of piece of pipe. All right, that's not going to break loose, and I'm not going to strip those out. So I'm just going to wait, get the right size Allen wrench, and break those loose. We'll take those oil samples later. That oil has finished draining out. Now we want to get that closed off, get this cover back on it, and then we'll be ready to put some oil in it. Good and tight. Now then, what I like about these covers, and they do this on a lot of their parts, is they're slotted right here on the top like that. That means you don't have to take those bolts all the way off in the back. You just simply put them up there, put that up there, and slide it, and that'll hold it up for you while you put these front ones in. I like that convenience. You know, every time I use one of these tools like this, a battery powered tool, especially the grease gun, it does it more so than any of the other stuff. It puts off a little bit of a smell, like a little electric smell, kind of burning smell. Every time I smell that, that reminds me of when I was a kid. I loved model trains when I was a kid, and little racetracks, those little electric racetracks that go around. And that's that same smell. And every time I smell that, it takes me back to the time when I was running those little race cars and trains on them train tracks. I absolutely loved it. So it's a good memory every time I use something like that. I enjoy it. Take a look now and see what we've got to do, what's left. I think everything is done except for the oil. We've got the fuel filter changed, we've got the oil filter changed, we've got oil sample taken, we've got a hydraulic sample taken, and then come over here to this side and talk about what we got done over here, which was the cabin filter behind that locked door, the inner and outer filter inside the engine compartment there, and then the inner cabin filter, we got that changed as well. Let's walk over here to the truck and see if we got any extra parts. That's how I know if I'm done with the job, is check and see if I got any parts left. And if I got parts left, then there's more to do, obviously. I don't see any parts left here other than some oil sample bottles, and we can't handle that at this moment. Oh, what I do want to show you is, I was going to show you when I sampled the final drives on the excavator, but since I get to do that, I do want to show you how this works. In one of the packs that we didn't use the hose, I'll show you that. And I'm going to need a bottle as well. So let's open this one right up right here and get that bottle out. I want to show you how to use this siphon pump here to take an oil sample. This basically is just a pump, that's what that is. You take the bottle and screw it onto the bottom just like that. And then you take the hose, which is in this bag sealed up, and then you take one end of that hose and you stick it down into the top of this and screw this little deal down right here, and that seals the hose inside this bottle. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but there, you see that hose just sticking down that bottom, kind of moving it up and down. Anyway, the end of that hose is not touching anything inside this pump. And then the next thing you do, so if you got a machine that doesn't have that easy access port to take an oil sample with, what you would do is just stick this down in the dipstick. Easy, whew, easy for you to say. Take this hose and stick it down into the dipstick hole, down into the oil. And then when you do that, you start working this pump, it'll pull oil up through this hose and we'll put it inside this bottle here without contaminating the pump or contaminating the where you screw on there. And then once you do finish that, get the oil in there, you simply take that off. You put your lid on it, seal it up, and then you want to discard this hose because it is at that point contaminated. You don't want to use that on anything else. Simple to use and pretty easy to do too. I said I didn't have no extra parts, but as I was cleaning up the back of the truck there, I found extra parts. This is the seal, the O-ring seal for the oil filter. Does it absolutely have to have it, or is it 100% necessary? Probably not. This old oil seal would work just fine, but I've got it. There's no oil back in this filter yet, so I can easily take this off and get that replaced. And to do that, you just simply take your finger around it like that. And it's being a pain, I gotta get a tool. Now then, I got this little sharp tool to take it in there, stick under that, and it just comes off just that easy. Then you take this new one, slide it on right there, you roll it into position, make sure it's not twisted. Just like that. Got a little oil on it, and we put it back in. Good to go. Now then, let's climb up here and see how hard it is to get to that oil fill plug. Okay, that's not too bad. Just right there. Easy enough. It's gonna take a long filter to get down in there to do it, but I've got one. Let's go get the oil off the truck and the filter, and let's get this thing put in there. The book calls for 2.9 gallons of oil in it, so I'll just go ahead and put 3 gallons in it. And that ought to be fine. Now then, let's get this process started so we can get to work, make some money. Well, that's going to go in slow. All right, about an hour from now, I'll get all this oil poured in there, and we'll get this thing started up, get everything checked, and we'll see what, probably dinner time then. I'll have to stop and eat a sandwich, of course, and then we'll get to work. Just for good measure, let's check the oil level before we start it up. Obviously, it's going to be good, but we will check it anyway. Oh yeah, that's good. As I was checking the oil there, I noticed 2 more places where I can take samples from. There's a sample port right there. And then there's another one back over here on this hydraulic motor. So I'm gonna get in the book and see what that's about, and then see if those are 2 places I also need to sample, along with where I did on top of the swing motor. So I'll get back with you on that. Let's get this thing started up and make sure everything's running good. All right, I'll let that run for just a few minutes there and get all the oil circulating in it, and we'll check the oil, make sure it's right. If I need to add some to it, we'll do that. The only thing left to do is to find out about those 2 testing ports, and then grease this machine up, and it's gonna be ready to go to work. As the machine's running there just a minute, I've been digging in the book, and the only place I see where it says hydraulic system oil sample obtained is from the hydraulic oil sampling valve, which is located on the swing motor line group, which is right there. That's what we checked. So I'm not sure on that hydraulic motor over there. I'm gonna check into that a little bit more and see what that's about. There is one other thing that I wanted to do as I was finishing up, and that's check the coolant and to send off a sample for that. So I got to looking in the sampling package, and there is one for the coolant. So I am going to get to show you how this siphon pump works. So basically what you do is you just stick it down in that reservoir right there where we can get a good sample, and maybe that will hold it down in there, or maybe not. Anyway, now then we just pull on this. You can see that fluid coming in through that hose and right into our bottle here. We want to get about 1/2 of a bottle, which is right there. That'll be good. And that sample is done. And one other thing I did mention this morning is how you actually send this stuff off. So in this kit, you actually get a postage paid slip here. It's a little plastic pouch. You put that in and put your return information on it, drop it off to the postal service, and they will send that right off to where it goes to. This is actually going to Carolina Tractor Fluid Analysis Laboratory. I guess the reason this is going to Carolina Cat instead of Stowers Caterpillar is because the machine was bought new from Carolina Cat, and I guess that's where that plan or that program for these filters is running through them. But anyway, we'll get this sent off and get the analysis back on that. Hopefully everything checks out good on it. Out of grease. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video there, the maintenance, the 1,000-hour service on the Cat 313. And I hope you enjoyed that. And just as I was thinking about the maintenance on this machine, I was also thinking about, well, what can I do the message about today? And clearly it came to me very plainly, is that we need to do maintenance in our own life, maintenance in our spiritual life. What is our relationship with God? Do we have a relationship with God? Have we placed our faith and trust in Him? And if you are a believer, if you're a Christian, you placed your faith and trust in Him, then that does require maintenance. And we need that constant and consistent fellowship with God to maintain the healthy spiritual life that we need to have. Well, how does that happen? Well, I'm glad you asked. That happens that happens through prayer, that happens through reading the Bible, that happens through going to church and hearing messages, whether it's in person or on the radio, or even this message that you're hearing right now. It's about hearing God's Word and then doing more than hearing it, because I did a message on that not too long ago about hearing and listening. But it's more about, it's not just about listening, it's about hearing and doing the work of God and doing what He's calling us to in our life. If we don't have a spiritual life that's being maintained, then how do we know what God's saying? How do we know how God's giving us direction? And just like the life that we have in our marriage, if there's no communication, if there's no maintenance in that relationship, then that relationship falls apart and tattered. So your spiritual life needs the same maintenance that this cat does. Not only every 1,000 hours, every day we need that spiritual maintenance in our life. I hope that you're trusting in Him. I hope you've placed Him first and foremost in your life. The most important decision you'll ever make in your life is to trust in Him for the forgiveness of your sins so that you can have eternal life. What is that eternal life? That eternal life is with God forever in heaven. He promises that through His Word, that if we place our faith and trust in Him, then He will save our souls. So God bless you, and I appreciate you watching.